whilst it's applaudable to expand the scholarly literature, most of that's not relevant to most policy questions, as most of the existing policy literature is not relevant to most policy questions, and a lot of it's not very good. And not good up to the job. And so we need to be careful to maintain those questions of relevance and quality. And I was interested in seeing the list of complex problems that you all put up, because for me, the ones that resonate the most are climate. Because climate is one where we're working at a very broad, generic number of a percentage increase in climate that means absolutely nothing for you and you and you and you. It means nothing for all these species. We need to understand this on regional, local levels. That's what people are trying to interact with. My big frustration is that a lot of the data and information that is provided to people is at a very broad, general policy, global level. And useless, absolutely useless. And in fact, we run a program, Sense About Science, globally on risk, which is helping people to articulate the risk trade-offs that they're trying to make and look for relevant information and data, and if it doesn't exist, to find it. I was really cheesed off last year when I saw the UN berating people over not taking action on climate. And then you look at the quality of the information, the generic information they're getting, higher risk of floods. How do you act on higher risk of floods? Well, you're going to sow a crop that is flood resistant with a guaranteed 30% drop in yield against this vague notion of higher risk of floods, changing average rainfall. Average what? My farm, your farm? My country, your country over the year? No clarity about what kind of average is being used there. There's a real need, I think, for expanding that kind of evidence. Farms at the moment the World Bank has noted this, farms are generating millions of data points. Are those data points from farms in, say, Uganda, going into the apps that are going to be sold out to the farmers' cooperatives, right, to help them decide what to plant when and when to harvest, right? Is that the data that's being fed in? So there's a whole lot of work to do. One of the big contributors to this risk project is Bernard Akebi, who's a journalist in vernacular radio in Western Kenya. And he's trying to help farmers to find their way through. And he thought his mission at first, as so many people often do, is to take the research out and get people to understand it. He quickly began to realize that the information just isn't there in a way that speaks to the genuine trade-offs and policies. And you mentioned, obviously, at the beginning, you mentioned the pandemic. What a great example. How incredible that all over the world schools were being shut and no one thought to model how to optimize two outcomes. Instead, you just got constant feed-in. Again, the way that the policy question is being posed, or the societal question is being posed, is not necessarily the way that the research is being done. Can we monitor transmission in schools? Actually, how do we close schools in a way that best reduces transmission, but does the least damage to growing children? No one models that. Isn't that incredible? So I think there's three things that we need. I think, first of all, we need to hear the questions, and I do think that science advisors need to be ready to equip us with those questions. When things are coming along the track, like we're using AI in decision-making increasingly, are we asking, and I wrote about this in the viewpoints, who is helping us as a society to identify what questions we should be asking, what these implications might be for the quality of the information we're using. So there's a lot of work to be done, I think, in the science advice sector, thinking, well, what are politicians going to ask about this? But also, more broadly in society, we need to be thinking about those questions and hearing those questions. The second thing is, I think, we need to give people a lot more context to the information we have, how reliable it is, how relevant it is to the question, how many diverse answers there are to this one question. Too much information. We just need to end the days where people are announcing, doing show and tell on their one research paper. So much PR, so unnecessary, so little public benefit to any of that. And finally, I think we need to make sure that researchers are confident in having these kinds of conversations. One of the things Elsevier actually and The Economist published some research a year or so ago that showed that researchers feel very much compelled to want to contribute to policy and societal discussions of this nature, but utterly overwhelmed at the idea of having a common ground about talking about things like uncertainty and gaps and so on. So something that we're very keen to take an initiative on, but others should be too. And I think that's a key point here, that we can do, we can encourage people to have the tools of a good policy discussion, a good public discussion, ways to connect between the research base and the questions that are facing us, right? But there are some things that as a society we need to grapple with and to express. I think we're not very good, and we haven't up till now got caught up with the modern age where a lot of debates are happening in the way they're happening online and unfolding, people being approached online about evidence issues and so on. And I think we need to start stating what kind of a world we want to live in, where we share this evidence and have these discussions. You know, there isn't an articulation of the things we value. Perhaps one or two areas, independent statistics. Most of us can explain that we like independent statistics, or we think that's important. We need to explain really create social value around open and honest and transparent discussion about evidence, and state that this means listening to results we don't like, that we put a greater value on the freedom to bring research into the public space than we do on the upset that those results might cause to us. And I think we have to, as multiple societies, we have to come together to say that's a social value, just as we should start to value people who enable us to ask difficult questions. I mean, it's incredible to me that the world is full of people who want to clamp down and censor on Facebook and define what is science and misinformation, disinformation, and yet librarians at community, school, university, national level, librarians are a dying breed. You know, they are people who are skilled at taking us as whether we are scholars or members of the public, taking our questions and helping us to find where the answers lie. And also politicians, you know, all of the parliaments have libraries as well. So I think what we socially value needs to, this is what I'm taking from INGSA, is a whole workload associated with that, to get out there and actually make a bit more of a public statement about the kind of world that we want to live in.